Good evening and welcome to the Hip Historian Virtual Happy Hour Tour. I am Brenda Holt with the Arizona State Office of AARP. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence and nearly 38 million members across the nation and approximately 900,000 right here in Arizona, we work to strengthen communities and we advocate for what matters most to families, such as health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. During the month of February, we will focus on caregiving by providing specific tools and information to help caregivers tackle post-holiday concerns, along with legal and financial issues. We understand the caregiving journey can be difficult and lonely, but we want you to know you are not alone. We are here for you and will help you navigate the challenging road ahead. Visit us at www.aarp.org/caregiving for more resources and information. You can also visit us at www.aarp.org/nearme to find out what local events we have coming up in the state. We hope you enjoy the tour tonight. Now I'll turn things over to Marshall Shore.
Welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello, good evening, everyone. I am so excited to tell you what we're doing tonight. So you might notice that my background is a little on the unique side. Why it's very red, why it's a very specific shade of red, because we are tonight at Taliesin West up in North Scottsdale. So excited to be here. And so that's going to be kind of the theme of the show. So I want to welcome you all here. As my name is Marshall, I am your host today. And so today is February 10th of 2022. But you know, it's got some really cool stuff going on today. Why, today, back in 1856, is when Haji Ali, a gentleman, came over from Syria with a bunch of camels that then wound up crossing that 35th parallel that really became kind of Route 66 through Arizona. So if you're ever up in Quartzsite, you can go visit his grave marker. And they've kind of, as they keep kind of updating things throughout the town, there are more and more camels showing up on everything. Now, it is also National Umbrella Day. And so, you know, whether it's rain or shine, umbrellas are oh so useful. I mean, I like to use them as personal shade devices. But, you know, they can also go in a cocktail, as well as, you know, there's been those movies they've been into. I mean, you know, just imagine singing in the rain without umbrellas. And one of my favorite movies, Mary Poppins. So actually, when I was at New York Public, they had that famous parrot-headed umbrella in a locker. You could just open it up, and there it was. Now, it's also National Teddy Day. So as we get ready to go into February 14th, which is not just Statehood Day, but it is also Valentine's Day. So, you know, be sure and buy your loved ones or other folks just prizes just because. Now, it's also National Cream Cheese Brownie Day, because who doesn't love a really decadent brownie with then a lovely swirl of cream cheese kind of in as it bakes and becomes oh so delicious. Now, it is also National Flannel Day, because, you know, not everywhere is having such beautiful weather as we're having here now. Why, some folks are chilly. They might be facing snowstorms. And so they indeed need to break out their flannel. Now, what can you expect on tonight's episode? Well, you know, we're going to have a little bit of trivia. We're going to do some music history. We're going to do from the vault, kind of art around that you might not be aware of or hidden in plain sight. We also do Little Arizona, talking about a town in Arizona, as well as a libation. And we have an amazing special guest. Oh my gosh, just you wait. So if this is your first time here, you're probably wondering, who is that man and why is he on my screen? So I said, my name is Marshall Shore. I'm also known as the Hip Historian, and I got here a little over 22 years ago from Brooklyn. I was working in a beautiful Carnegie building, but decided, like so many others out there, to trade that slush, that wind, for something completely different. And so I started working in a library in South Phoenix that was a 1950s library. That library no longer stands, but they are in a beautiful, more modern library that was designed by Richard and Bauer, a local architecture firm right here in the valley. So when I first moved here, we promptly moved into a 1956 ranch. And originally it was, so many tones of beige. I'm happy to say now it is two-tone, seafoam and cantaloupe. And kind of the house is a little bit of a time capsule. Why, there's what my kitchen looks like today. It's even actually, I think it's even cleaner than that now. Now, as soon as we got here from New York, all I kept hearing about, there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true, because every time I would go for an adventure, whether it was on my bike, in my car, on foot, I kept running into so many amazing people, places, and stories. And that's one of the things that really kind of got me going and talking about trying to create more and more connections with our really cool history. Then there's that post-war boom that I think in so many ways made the Arizona that we all know and love today. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passed through on their way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving to Arizona in huge numbers, changing how we would get around in so many ways. So my name is Marshall. I'm also known as the Hip Historian, which means I get to play a lot with Arizona history. So we've got coming up this weekend, we have a haunted history walking tour of downtown Phoenix, where we'll all be masked and all outdoors. So let me know if you'd like more information on that. As well as I just started kind of hitting the pavement for an LGBT history book of Phoenix. And so that's already been quite interesting. Just kind of dipping my toe into it. More to come on that as we progress. And it is indeed, as we just get ready in just a few days, Valentine's Day, or also happy birthday, Arizona. 110 years we have been a state, no longer a territory. Now I see some of you have found the chat. Now also, if you want to reach out and say you forget to put something in the chat, you can always reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, email, or even good old-fashioned via go through my website. So many ways. I love hearing from you all, because that's my best way to actually get stories and so much. And so now I'm excited because, okay, we've never done this before. So normally at this point, we talk about how PJ's made a cocktail, and my bartender, Silent Bob, who is actually not right now at Taliesin West. So I'm excited to say we actually have PJ here, who's going to talk about a little bit about the cocktail that he created, which is 4-Tenant Teeny. It's got a little blue coat. Actually, I'm going to let him do this because you don't need me to do it. He's the one that created it. So I'm going to just swap seats with him so that way he can tell you about the cocktail.
Well, hello, hipsters and history lovers. Today we've got the 4 Tenants Teeny, and if you're paying close attention, this is going to give you an edge later on when we do trivia, because this is based on the 4 tenets of Frank Lloyd Wright's approach to architecture. So we're honoring the space that we're in, this awesome structure, by dedicating the cocktail to Frank Lloyd Wright and his philosophies. We're dedicating the idea of democracy by using Blue Coat Gin from Philadelphia. We're honoring his vision of sight and the importance of sight by using Pau Maui vodka, which is distilled on the Maui Gold pineapple plantation. That's as local, natural, organic, and close-knit as it gets. And then we're honoring the idea of materials being so important by using lemon from the herb garden at my restaurant Recreo in downtown Chandler, and just a little bit of yuzu to make that connection that citrus is important to communities all over the world. And here you have the Four Tenants Teeny. Cheers, Marshall.
Just don't try to, after one of these, don't try to say the name.
Right.
Because you'll likely not make it. So, wow, that is the first time we've ever done that been able to do it live. So, and you know, we've talked about maybe trying to do some live event like this. So we shall see what the future holds, because that would be so much fun to be able to do that. Oh, and now I need to. Oh, and that yuzu adds just a nice little kind of a little uptick to it. Very nice. Well, I need to move it from right in front of me, because otherwise you'll see me and the cocktail. So, oh my gosh. So as we get ready to go on, so we have Little Arizona. So we're going to talk about Camp Verde. So I was recently up in Cottonwood, and when you drive up, you know, the first thing you spot is just, I mean, Camp Verde, but you also get to see that amazing world's largest Coco Pelli that actually is not just a plastic sign, but it's actually steel plated and made by an iron worker or a blacksmith. And so when they originally built the sign, it had a price tag of over $25,000 on it. Now it is just a way to demarcate that, hey, you're getting ready for a Camp Verde experience. Now, one thing I think is really cool about Camp Verde is as you're driving around, you'll see not just out of Africa, where you can get in a big truck and go driving around looking at animals, but you also could go swimming with a tiger, which sounds kind of scary, but they said it's for kids. So there you go. So, you know, I've never been, but I've had some friends that went and loved it. So I guess I need to get up there and see what it's all about. And so, also, if you're driving around, you'll find the Verde Valley Architectural Center, which was really only opened up like 2010, but it was really done to try and play up on like the 10,000 years of human habitation in the area, to try and preserve and educate. And so they do a wide variety of things that you can use to explore the area around. But one of the things I love is that there's so much diversity up there. Now, when they originally started, I mean, agriculture was huge. So there are some original ditches. And so they have those now demarcated so you can go walk through and see those ditches, as well as there's a walking tour. So you can go see some of the architecture that tells you the story of it, where it came from. And, you know, when you talk about architecture up in Camp Verde, I mean, you've got the Montezuma Castle National Monument. Now, since the early 50s, no one has been the public cannot access the castle any longer, which is really just, I mean, as a cliff dwelling. And so what I think is really cool is if you go online, you can actually take a virtual tour of each floor of the castle as you go through it. So I think that is really cool that even though you can't go there, you can still get to see up close and personal what's going on. So now we are ready for an oh so special guest. So let me tell you about Fred Prizolo. He's the Vice President of Preservation for the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation, overseeing the preservation of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, Taliesin and Taliesin West, and their collections. Now, Mr. Prizolo received his Master's of Architecture degree from the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture. As a student, he interned with renowned conservation architects Sandy, Kintro, and Associates, working in Angkor Wat, Cambodia, Kathmandu, Nepal, before returning to Taliesin to head the preservation efforts Mr. Prizolo worked on notable projects such as the award-winning rehabilitation of that mid-century modern iconic hotel in Scottsdale, the Hotel Valley Ho. All right. So, Fred, I want to welcome you. Oh, it helps if I click on the right button. Hello.
Hey, how are you? Welcome to Taliesin West.
Oh my gosh, I am so happy to be here in this space. It's such a, I mean, the pavilion is such a beautiful room. I mean, with that overhead lighting and all that red and the red of the seats, which nobody else can see but me, but.
Yeah, it's a great room, and really even better when you're in there watching a performance, music or theatrical performance. The space really comes alive. It's a great space.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen music acts, and I know you have. I know we were just chatting about Southwest Shakespeare is going to be doing a performance here coming up in the next few months, so that's exciting.
Right. We have many programs open to the public. You can come up and we have musical performances all the time. Southwest Shakespeare is here quite often throughout the year. We have lectures on architecture and building and art, and so yeah, it's a I encourage everyone to check out our website franklloydwright.org and see what's playing and what's coming up, and sign up and come up.
Indeed, because there's all kinds of things going on. All right. So now we're going to do a little bit of trivia. And so what's unique about our trivia is, unlike a lot of, if you've ever done trivia at a bar where it's more about, here's the answer and now we're done, the fun part here is we'll actually go through all the multiple choice questions, take a little bit of an Arizona music break history, and then we will launch into Fred telling us about those answers. So that way, once we can all go to a cocktail party and have cocktails, we have something to share with all those friends. Cheers. Oh, that's right. I forgot you have a drink as well.
That's right.
Indeed. All right. So our first question, now you can keep track of your trivia. Some folks do it in the chat session. Some folks do it on their pad and a pen of paper, whatever makes you happy. No judgment here. All right, so question 1. Where is Taliesin West located? Oh, I'm sorry, actually, where is Taliesin located? So I'm not there because I'm at Taliesin West. So where is Taliesin located? Is it A, Arizona, B, Wisconsin, C, Chicago, or both A and B? All right. While you're thinking about where Taliesin is located, we're going to move on to question 2. What does Taliesin mean? Is it A, house on the hill, B, shining brow, B, beautiful space, or D, built-in nature? So while you're trying to figure out what Taliesin means, we are going to move on to question 3. So in what year did Frank Lloyd Wright first come to Arizona? Was it A, 1920, B, 1925, C, 1927, or D, 1937? All right. So which year did he first show up in Arizona? And question 4. How long did Taliesin West take to complete? A, 2 years, B, 6 years, C, 10 years, or D, more than 85 years? All right. So question 5. What did Frank Lloyd Wright and his wife Olga Vanna call the group of architects they taught and oversaw? All right. Was it A, the Wright School, B, the Taliesin Fellowship, C, the Apprenticeship, or D, the Taliesin School? So what did they call the architects that they taught and oversaw? All right. Question 6. How old was right when he began working on Taliesin West? Was he A, 50, B, 60, C, 70, or D, 80 years old? How old was Frank Lloyd Wright when he began working on this amazing property? All right. Question 7. How many buildings did Frank Lloyd Wright construct in his life? About 1,000? Around 50? C, 443? Or approximately 550? So how many buildings do you think Frank Lloyd Wright constructed during his life? All right, question 8. One of Wright's largest commissions was for the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York City. The museum opened its doors to the public shortly after Frank Lloyd Wright's passing. What year was that? Was it A, 1961, B, 1985, C, 1937, or D, 1959? All right, and we're coming to that home stretch. We're almost at the last question, but not quite there yet. All right, so question 9. Over the course of his life, Wright continually revised the principles of what he called organic architecture. However, there are 4 tenets that guide his architectural philosophy and practice. What are they? Well, let me take a drink of my cocktail first. All right. So was it A, space, material, sound, and sight? B, light, space, material, and integrated design? Or C, scale, democracy, material, and light? Or D, space, sight, materials, and democracy? All right. Well, you're trying to figure out that alphabet soup of what his tenets were. Question 10. How can Taliesin West be seen right now? A, tours. B, programs. C, kids activities. Or D, all of the above. So while you are locking in your final answers, we're going to go on and take a quick music break through Arizona. So we're going to talk about a building that was a house. It also became a grocery store in the late 40s. It then became a ballet school in the 50s. In the 70s, it became a Mexican restaurant. And then in the 80s, it became a speakeasy. It also became Shars Has the Blues. And so it recently, actually just last weekend, had its grand reopening, and it was so much fun. So much great music. Why they even brought back Big Pete Pearson, who'd been playing there from the early days. So he was there on opening weekend, which was so much fun to have so much great music. And they were bringing lots more music. So be sure and check them out and see what else is going on at what is now called Shars Live. All right. So who is ready for some answers? I have a feeling Fred is ready for some answers. He's been awfully quiet and just sipping his beverage. All right. So our first question, where is Taliesin located? And it's both A and B, Arizona and Wisconsin.
That's right, Arizona and Wisconsin. Wright first built his home in Wisconsin, in the ancestral valley along the Wisconsin River, and built this home that he called Taliesin, and it was built there on the, out in the valley. Wasn't until 1937 that he started construction here in Scottsdale, Arizona, on Taliesin West. He had come down with a bad bout of pneumonia in 1936, and his doctor said, you should really get out of the Wisconsin winters. find somewhere, much more temperate.
Oh.
Maybe you could extend your life about 20 years. And so, having been here before, he remembered the wonderful winter weather, purchased some land here at the foot of the McDowell Mountains, and Taliesin West, his winter camp, began. So,
Oh, well, I had no idea that kind of how he wound up being here for so long started off like so many other people who moved here for their health.
that's right. He was, one of the first snowbirds.
And indeed he was.
Oh,
Wow. And if anybody needs to see what our weather is like, just open up your door.
yeah, it's quite.
You might want to put on a light jacket because it's probably getting a little chilly out right now, as opposed to a parka, thermal underwear, a scarf, and gloves, and everything else. Although I see my friend Frank is on, so he's already got all that stuff on for when he leaves his house in Jersey.
Yeah, so he was one of the first snowbirds, and just came back, migrated every year. He was up in Wisconsin from Thanksgiving. Excuse me, he was up in Wisconsin from Easter to Thanksgiving. And then after Thanksgiving dinner, they packed up. They all caravanned down here, set up shop here in Scottsdale until the weather broke up north, and then headed back.
Just like so many people do now.
That's right.
All right. So our second question is, what does Taliesin mean? And it's B, shining brow.
Right, shining brow. It's a Welsh word. Wright's family was Welsh, came over from Wales, and a strong Welsh family. Wright took the term Taliesin, which means shining brow, because in Wright's work, he wants his architecture to work with the land. He doesn't want it to, kind of really stand out from the landscape. He wants to really be integrated into the landscape and belong with the landscape. He really appreciated nature and the land, and he wanted, the building and the land to fit, really hand in hand. And so when he started building his home in Wisconsin, in the valley there, he built his home on the brow of the hill, not on the top of the hill, right?
Oh.
That way the house blended and worked with the hill. It wasn't like, taking this foreign thing and plopping it on top of a beautiful hill. It integrated into the side of the hill. And they were, it was a lovely, lovely setting. Shining brow, built on the brow of the hill.
And I didn't realize it was Welsh origin. So there you go.
Yeah, that was it.
All right. So what year did Frank Lloyd Wright come to Arizona? And it was C, 1927.
Yeah, all the way back in 1927, he was invited to consult on the construction of the Biltmore Hotel, our famous resort here in Phoenix. The architect of the hotel was Chase MacArthur, and Chase worked in Wright's studio in Chicago when Wright had a home and studio in Oak Park in Chicago. And when Chase was hired by his brothers, who were automobile dealers here in Phoenix and who wanted to build a resort to take advantage of the great weather here and lure all of those Midwesterners down from Chicago, they hired their brother Chase. Chase wanted to use a building material that Wright had used in some of his homes that he was constructing in California, what we call the textile block. So if you ever go to the Biltmore, you'll see it's this wonderful pattern block. And he hired Wright to be a consultant and work in the building.
And so how did he get from working on working at the Biltmore to then here? I mean, was there anything else in between?
Yeah, so while he was here consulting, he met Dr. Chandler, the doctor, which the city of Chandler here in the valley is named after. And Dr. Chandler also wanted to get in on the deal. He wanted to have a resort here to lure tourists. And while Wright was consulting on the Biltmore, he commissioned him to build a hotel on the south side of South Mountain. Wright took the commission, and the next year he came back, set up a camp on the site of the hotel. That way he could draw inspiration from the site, and designed and worked on the hotel on that site with his draftsmen for that whole winter season of 28, 29.
Oh, wow. So when you say 29, it's like, there's a little economic disaster that is looming right there.
That's right. And unfortunately, that disaster wiped out Dr. Chandler's resources to build the hotel. And so it was only one winter that Wright spent here in that camp, Camp Ocotillo, he called it. And it wouldn't be for another few years before he would return to build Taliesin West.
Ah. All right. So how long did Taliesin West take to complete? And the answer is more than 85 years.
That's right. Taliesin West was a laboratory for Wright. Every year he'd come back after spending the summer up in Wisconsin, and he'd see the place with a new eye. And he'd say, all right, why don't we kind of change this up? Let's move this wall over here. Why don't we rethink the way we've done our pavilion roofs? Let's play with the materials. Let's play with the forms. Let's play with the space and really experiment with it to work out, his architectural ideas. So, it was always changing. Right before he passed away, he said to his wife, Olga, he said, Olga, I leave you and the apprentice Taliesin West as a charcoal sketch for you to finish. So, telling them, look, you continue on, stay here, work, and keep experimenting and growing Taliesin West. So, they did so a little bit. They were very respectful to Wright's work and the original form, but they maintained Taliesin West and continued the architectural practice here and the ideas of what Taliesin was to be as a kind of an architectural community working together.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was supposed to be like a laboratory and then kind of evolved from there.
Right. Yeah. Everyone was here living and learning about architecture, really living architecture, building here, staying here, working together.
All right. So question 5, what did Frank Lloyd Wright and his wife Olga call the group of architects they taught and oversaw? And it was B, the Taliesin Fellowship.
Yep, the Taliesin Fellowship was the name that they gave to the group that were all here. And I kind of mentioned it just a minute ago. They were really working together, kind of working towards this idea of a better way to build and live that Wright was preaching. He was wanted to create a new kind of architecture, an architecture for America. When he was born, America was a young nation. He felt that it was a great nation and it deserved to be, have a great architecture like the great civilizations of the past. So he wanted an architecture that was American specific, related to this great land that we had. And so he brought all these young men and women together to learn about this architecture. So they were really kind of trying to develop a new way to live in America.
Wow. All right. So question 6, how old was Wright when he began working on Taliesin West? Oh my gosh. C70.
Yeah. Can you imagine coming out here in 1937, 38, the winter of 37, 38, out here with a band of 25, 30 young 20, 30-year-old kids, bushwhacking their way out here to the foot of the McDowells, living in cabins and tents while they cleared the land here and built Taliesin West. I mean, it really must have been a grand adventure for these young, architects in training or apprenticing to Wright, to just come out here and build this place that was going to be, Frank Lloyd Wright, the greatest American architect. I mean, even the greatest American architect back then, he was known as.
Right.
Living here with them and building, Wright's winter camp, and really, for Wright to do it at 70, but then, for these young men and women who were joining them, it just must have been an amazing adventure.
Yeah, and that would have been back when there was like nothing out here.
There was nothing. It was open range, from here at the foot of the McDowells all the way over to the Camelback. Maybe a few ranches here and there as you looked out over the valley, but no construction. Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. So how many buildings did Frank Lloyd Wright construct in his life? And it's D, approximately 550 buildings.
Yeah, he was prolific. He designed over 1,000 architectural works in his lifetime and had almost half of them realized, which is really quite amazing. Architecture wasn't a job for Wright. It was his life. It was a passion. And he was always trying to push the limits with design, with materials, always trying to do something new, trying to reinvent how we live and build. People were taken by Wright. He was a big personality, and they got on board, and he had a number of really wonderful commissions.
So I think probably a building that everyone knows, at least in the Valley, that's Frank Lloyd Wright, is ASU's Gammage Theater.
Right. Gammage Theater was designed by Wright. It was constructed just after his passing, so it's one of his later works. So we're lucky here in Phoenix. We have a number of Wright buildings, a handful of homes designed by Wright and Gamage, and a church over on, I believe it's 7th Avenue.
Yeah.
Great theater.
So there were a lot of buildings, I guess, that were done after he had passed away.
Well, he was a famous American architect, had a lot of commissions on his boards, as we say, on the drafting board when he passed away. And so the Taliesin Fellowship, continued the projects and finished the projects out after Wright's passing. And the Gamage is one of them. The Marin Civic Center up in Marin, California is another.
All right. Question 8. One of Wright's largest commissions was for the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York City. The museum opened its doors to the public shortly after Frank Lloyd Wright's passing. What year was that? 1959.
So, in looking at that image you just had up there, just imagine 1959, you're in downtown Manhattan, and, it's a sea of boxes up and down the boulevards and the parkways, right? Big rectangular boxes. And here in 1959, Wright does something extremely radical. He puts in a circular structure right in there just to break up everything. He designs, a completely different kind of museum. Up to that point, art museums were either your classical style, your with the columns and pediments, and or they were the very modern pavilions, glass and steel. And here comes Wright with this cylindrical form with the ramp, where you go up to the top of the ramp, and you work your way down the spiral, down to the ground floor, always walking down the ramp, viewing the work. Really, again, Wright, a wonderful example of Wright just pushing the limits and really kind of coming up with something new and ingenious, really.
Right. I mean, and it's so much fun. You take that elevator all the way to the very top, and then just kind of almost like gravity just pulls you down through all that art.
Yeah, it's a great experience. And again, today it's one of the famous art museums of the world. And it's everybody enjoys it. But back in '59, this was so radical.
That would have been right. You're right. It would have been such a shock.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody was used to it's like you had the boxes.
That's right. Yeah. So, again, another great example of Wright just pushing the limits and coming up with something new and interesting.
So did he use, so that used ramps. Did he use ramps in other buildings like that?
Yeah, the Guggenheim was a work in progress for about 16 years. It was 1943 that he started the commission. And it was a real challenge. And he went through some different designs, and he tested his theories on the ramps on other projects. The V.C. Morris gift shop in San Francisco has a small ramp. Here in Phoenix, we have the David and Gladys Wright house, work for his son, that has a ramp to bring you up to the living floor, the living level that is raised up off the ground so that your living level of the home is at the treetops, allowing the citrus groves of Arcadia to become his, front lawn, really. So yeah, he worked on the spiral a little bit and other projects, building up to the Guggenheim.
And I'm so excited because just the end of last month, the David Wright House is now on the National Register of Historic Places, which is very exciting.
That is exciting. It's a wonderful house, a wonderful work, and it absolutely deserves to be on the National Register, for sure.
Oh, and then my friend Anita says Gamage's loading dock is down ramps.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I've never seen that side of Gamage. That's so funny that it's like you wind up even in that building, you get that idea of a ramp, but it's in the functional space as opposed to the public space. All right. So question 9. Over the course of his life, Wright continually revised the principles of what he called organic architecture. However, there are 4 tenets that guide his architectural philosophy and practice, and they are D, space, site, materials, and democracy.
Yeah, Wright, the big things Wright was doing with architecture, he was really creating a new space to live in. When Wright was growing up, the Victorian home was all the rage, and Victorian homes is what Wright termed a house that is boxes within boxes, right? You have these square forms or rectilinear forms. You walk into a room, you close the door to get into the next room. You open the door, walk into another box, which is another room. So it's these closed off boxes sequentially moving through the house. Wright wanted to blow all of that up and create free and flowing space so that you were connected. The family dynamic was changing in the late 1800s, and Wright believed that the family could gather in front of the hearth, right, and see into the next room to see if somebody else was in the next room doing something. In a sense, that was democratizing space, right, because he was opening up and freeing it for the family. So space, whole new way to think about space. And really, you can thank Frank Lloyd Wright for the great room that you have right now. The where your kitchen is kind of linked to the dining room living space, and while you're in there making a meal, you can keep an eye on the kids there. That was Wright. He was opening up the space and making a free flowing space. And then big thing is materials. He believed in natural use of the materials. So let the material act in the way that it naturally wants to be. So let stone be stone, and have wood represent as wood. Have your structure be built out of materials that you find around the site or in that region of the world, right? So again, it's linking that structure to that part of the world, and again, integrating the building to the site. And so
I think like one of the striking things is when you look at Taliesin West is, in some ways, it's almost like terrazzo. It's like there are so many big rocks incorporated into the concrete. Are those from this site?
That's right. He sent the apprentice out into the landscape and told them to collect, large rocks with a flat face. And when he built the forms to pour the concrete, they would prop the stones up on the inside of the form, wire them to the form, and then pack the center with the dry concrete mix. And then, just like you see behind me, you have this concrete and stone material structure that really represents the desert floor here. If you imagined tilting the desert floor up, that's what the desert floor looks like, right? Stone and sand, and that's
right
in the stone and concrete. So again, this idea of linking the building to the site. So this other tenet of site, the site was so important to Wright, and the building should work with the site.
All right. So how can Taliesin West be seen right now? And you might be shocked, but it's all of the above through tours, programs, and kids' activities. So what all is going on right now at Taliesin West?
We have a ton going on all of the time. And I really do encourage everyone out there to check out our webpage, franklloydwright.org. We have tours every day, 7 days a week. And you can get ticket information online there, purchase your tickets right online before you come on up. We have night tours, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. So right now we have a wonderful exhibit by the world famous glass artist Dale Chihuly. We have installations of his work integrated throughout our historic property. And it's really quite stunning, beautiful during the day, but man, at night when it's all lit up and backlit against lit up against these wonderful buildings, right. It's an experience. So I really encourage everyone to come out and check out our property while we have Dale Chihuly here. He runs through June, so you have some good time to still get tickets. We are selling out. It's pretty popular, so I encourage you to get.
Oh, that's great! I didn't realize it was selling out.
Yes, we are. There are times when we're sold out, and most of the time. Great. So get your tickets ahead of time online, so that you can come up and really experience this amazing work where we have Chihuly and Wright together. It's really wonderful.
Right, two amazing artists together, which is really such a beautiful idea.
It is, and Dale Chihuly's work. Inspired by nature, just like Wright. He was inspired by Wright. When he started school, he was going to school for interior design because he loved Frank Lloyd Wright. He got a little sidetracked from building and interiors when he blew glass for the first time at the University of Washington. But the ideas of Wright and the connection to nature always stayed with him, and so that's really why his work is so, perfect for Taliesin West. And it just really feels like it just belongs here. It really works lovely with the buildings. And so it's really something to see. So I encourage you to come up.
Indeed. So yeah, so you can log on and see that. And so I always ask people as we kind of wind down trivia is how did they do? And I always like to say, it's not about how many you got right or wrong, but we're all winners. But I am going to share, Sarah just posted that. So her nephew doesn't know who Frank Lloyd Wright is. So she has now given him the assignment to Google him and find out. Great. So Sarah, that is great. I am so glad you're doing that. That's the fun of doing this exact thing, is that we get to educate folks about a whole layer of Arizona and so much more than we even thought. So I want to thank you so much, Fred, for coming on and sharing some of your life with us. I mean, the fact that you kind of grew up here a little bit. You spent a lot of time here.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. If you haven't been to Taliesin West, come on up, check it out. You'll be amazed. I'm sure. I've been, I went to school here in the 90s. I've always could have been working here, associated with it, been in a role of preserving it for the last 10 years. And I see something new and amazing every day. So, whether you've never been here and you come up for the first time, or if you've been here, it hasn't been, it's been a while since you've been here. I encourage you to come on back because you'll see something new and exciting every time you visit.
So, Fred, does that mean you went out and built a shelter out in the middle of the desert?
I did when I was an apprentice here.
Wow.
From 97 to 2000, I was working on my master's here at the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture. And so I was living and working here, apprenticing in the studio under architects that apprenticed to Frank Lloyd Wright. So, received my master's. And as part of the work here, was able to design, build, and live in a shelter out here out in the desert. So, it's a wonderful way for an architect in training to learn how to take an idea from their mind, get it down on paper, get it reviewed by other architects, and then build it to really see, what it's like to think through a design project and then have it, constructed. So it was a wonderful experience, and it was a wonderful time here at Taliesin West.
So can you talk? I mean, I just find that so fascinating that you had to build a structure and then live in it.
Yeah.
That must have been so, I mean, at some points not pleasant.
Well, you're right. Yes. When you have to build something, for the first time, and like I said, you get this idea out of your head onto paper, and you can draw and, design something on paper, but then, what you designed, can you really build that? When you design, a beam coming into a post or connected to a roof, can you put that together? Is there enough room, to stick a tool up there and connect things? How do things resolve in 3 dimensions as opposed to on paper? You learn all of that through this process. And then, when you construct it and you're in it and it starts raining or the wind starts blowing and, you learn, hey, did I, is my structure sound enough? Am I going to blow away in a stiff storm? Did I do a proper roof and enclosure? Am I staying dry when it rains? So it's a wonderful learning experience, and I think every architect should go through that experience before they get out in the world and start designing something for a client.
Wow. Thank you for that perspective. So Fred, thank you so much for joining us. So I do want to, okay, so I am in the pavilion. So where are you? I mean, I see some shelves, but I don't know that room. I don't think I've seen that on one of the tours.
Yeah, right now I'm sitting in Frank Lloyd Wright's bedroom here. So the big, let me see if I look, right behind me is the big, this way, the big fireplace in his room, and the shelves here where he kept his book, and there's some Native American pottery. So yeah, this is his private bedroom.
Wow. So again, Fred, thank you so much. I mean, sharing Frank Lloyd Wright's bedroom with us. I mean, this has been so great. I mean, I love people saying, hey, I really love this topic, and I think people have learned a lot. So thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm really happy that you were able to come out to Taliesin West. And
oh, I know. I'm so happy to be sitting in this room. Oh my gosh. So Alexandra, thank you so much for making this all happen. This has been so much fun. And Fred, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. You too. And thanks to everyone out there watching.
Oh my gosh. That was so much fun. I mean, I love, as I'm sitting here in the middle of this room learning about, because I always knew there were like structures that other people lived in, that they designed, built, and then had to live in. But it's so great to hear from Fred about how amazing that experience was and how it changed what he's doing. All right, so now we're going to do From the Vault. And so, okay, so, if you come to the Phoenix Art Museum, as you're walking around, you'll find, there's Western art, which is very typical of what you're thinking you're going to find. Some Remingtons, some Ed Mell, with those great landscapes that of like the Grand Canyon, things like that. So, you kind of already know what you're going to hit or see. But then it's like you turn a corner and then there's this, which is called the Wild Bunch or Hole in the Wall Gang. And so let's actually make that bigger, because this was, I think, just an astounding painting. I love how there's so many layers to this, to the point where it almost looks like those boots, are just almost like sausage, how it's like pushing at the casing and everything else. But that's, and so what I thought was interesting was this was a Western painting by a gentleman named Ivan Albright. So I think his big work that some of you might know is in the picture of Dorian Gray that was filmed in black and white. But at the very last scene where there was the painting of Dorian Gray, who was young and youthful, and as he was a horrible human being, the painting of him would take on those scars that for what he was doing. And so Ivan Albright's painting was used in that very last scene of the picture of Dorian Gray. And I love how kind of his same work translated then into that Western scene, which is really just boots on a hearth. But it's so much more than that. And I love the Phoenix Art Museum because they do have so much work that you can just spend forever and almost get lost in. And so now you'll see why I always suggest that people want to share this on Facebook. Share the love, because we've had so much fun here. I mean, I just adore being in this setting. I mean, and I'm drinking a Frank Lloyd Wright. Oh God, I'm going to mix the name up now. The Tenant Teeny, or the 4-tenant Teeny. So, thank you all so much for being here as we get ready to talk about next week. So next week, my friend Russ is going to talk about the Monkees. That's right. That music group that was here in the late 60s. That's the whole show is going to be about them and their adventure here in the Valley. So that's going to be a lot of fun as we get ready to just explore and talk about the Monkees. Now, remember, if you have questions, if you didn't squeeze them into the chat, feel free to reach out to me. Now, as we get ready to say goodnight and see you next week, so we can talk about the Monkees, I always want to give a shout out to Cole and Chris, who shot that great video and created the music for it, as well as PJ, who you actually got to see talking about one of the amazing cocktails that is created. Now, as we get ready to say goodnight, I am going to leave you with the balloon parade. So we recently had on as a guest Suze from Tucson, and she is a clown every year in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And so we are going to leave with our own balloon parade that happened in the early 50s. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your night.